Hello, my name is George Lawton, and I'm a writer for Diginomica. And today I'm here with some of the pioneers in digital twins to talk about the history and future of it. We have Dr. Michael Grieves, who's Executive Director and Chief Scientist for the Digital Twin Institute, who pioneered the concept of digital twins to bring digital transformation innovation to physical products. We also have John Vickers, who is currently the NASA Principal Technologist in the area of advanced materials and manufacturing, with over 30 years of experience in improving the development, rollout, and operations of propulsion, spacecraft, and scientific systems. Now, people have been building physical models of things for millennia and virtual reality simulations for decades. Dr. Grieves' insight lay in formalizing a process of connecting digital representations of things across the different aspects of the engineering, manufacture, maintenance, and disposal across their life cycle. This came to be known as Agile Product Lifecycle Management. John Vickers, who had been working at NASA, suggested the term digital twins to help frame the discussions about this exciting field. Now, a digital twin is a virtual replica of a product, factory, building, or supply chain that may be connected to its physical twin. Some of the more useful digital twins are used as prototypes for testing design ideas before they are built. Grieves finds it helpful to think of these digital twin prototypes, which complement digital twin instances of a specific product, and digital twin aggregates that help understand the behavior of a fleet of things, like the performance of a line of cars in different environments. Over the last couple of decades, pure digital companies like Google and Uber have demonstrated the incredible benefits of agile development for software. And some early pioneers in these kind of agile development techniques like Tesla and SpaceX have done amazing things in building electric cars in scale. And, SpaceX, for example, has launched 3,000 out of the 6,000 active satellites in orbit. However, these seem harder for other companies. So just to frame the discussion of why digital twins are important, what do you think is the role that digital twins can play in achieving the same results as these digital natives? Let's start with you, Michael.
Yeah, so I think you have to understand the underlying premise behind why we want to do this stuff, and that is that information is a replacement for wasting resources. So if I take any task, I can basically divide it up in two parts: the minimum use of physical resources to achieve our goal, and everything above that is waste. In fact, we have a term for that: lean manufacturing. Information won't replace the physical resources that I need to actually do the task, but it can replace the wasted resources over and above that. And so this idea of moving work into the virtual world to basically be able to do things a lot faster and cheaper with bits as opposed to expensive atoms, I think is what drives not only digital twins but digital transformation. In fact, all information technology in general. So that's kind of why we want to do this sort of thing, is to move work from the physical world, where as soon as we had an idea, we had to have it take physical form, either a drawing, a blueprint, a physical prototype, because we've always had virtual representations in our own minds, but you can't share that very well. I mean, unless the Vulcan mind meld actually comes about, you have no ability to share it in the granularity and the detail you need. And digital twins allows you to do that.
John, how are you actually starting to use these kind of principles in your work at NASA?
So that's a good question. 10 years ago or more, a little more maybe, we didn't have the term digital twin, and so in the work that we were doing at NASA, you didn't see digital twin concepts or the ideas come up. But I look at an awful lot. Part of my job is to review proposals from both inside and outside of agency, and I see more and more of the digital and virtual intersection with what we're trying to do for things like physical prototypes. One of the measures that I use to see how digital twins are evolving is to take a look at the Google Scholar database. And so just this morning, I give presentations with Mike around the country on digital twins. And so I usually have an updated number on how many technical papers are being written on any given topic. And so in this case, digital twins. So I took a look this morning. So if you do an exact search on Google Scholar for digital twin papers, this morning you get approximately 17,000 papers that have been produced in this year. So this year is not even over, 2023. So that's a tremendous amount. That's generally academic work. So that's a tremendous amount of academic work that's going on in this area today.
So going back, what I'd be interested in hearing about some of the early experiences and insights that led to the formulation and thinking about digital twins. I saw some of the things you'd written, Mike, about the telephone company and trying to sort out where the wires were, and the computational capacity was just not there in the early days, but now it's actually starting to catch up with that. And I'd similarly like to hear from you in a minute, John, but let's start with you, Mike.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, and I have been in the computer industry for a long time. In fact, I was lucky enough. I came out of a steel mill town to learn to program under National Science Foundation program in high school, and so I got into mainframes early on. In fact, I still was a teenager, which is kind of unbelievable. And I was running major operations in my early 20s. A lot of broken glass in that period of time. I'm not sure you put a 20-year-old in charge of multi-million-dollar operations. But anyway, I had been approached on projects, and I always thought that you could represent sort of the physical world in the digital world. The problem is that at that point in time, in fact, I was running a large mainframe that did time sharing. I had 192K bytes of internal main memory to deal with, and we had disk drives, but they were basically the size of half a table, and they had 10 megabytes worth of capacity. And so we really didn't have the capability. But always in the back of my mind, it was this idea that if you could basically use the digital capabilities to reflect what was happening in the physical world, you'd be able to do a lot more work than you can with physical stuff. I mean, it's expensive to develop a physical prototype and test it. And John could talk about a recent one that NASA did. It cost hundreds of millions of dollars. But when I went back and got my doctorate, I had started a major computer company and had decided I had enough fun playing with the accountants and attorneys, and went back and got my doctorate from Case Western. I started sort of looking at the idea that says we could really now start to have a representation of physical products in digital capability. And that sort of started my way of thinking about the idea of the digital twin model, which has sort of three parts as far as I'm concerned. You have the physical object and the physical environment that we've always had and still have since time immemorial. We now have the digital product, and I hadn't really dealt with the digital environment, but you got to have that if you're really going to do something. And then you have data that populates from the physical world to the virtual world, and then the kicker here is you can use that information over in the physical world to basically replace wasted physical resources. So that was sort of the first model that really laid out those kind of capabilities, and that's sort of my view. I mean, everybody asks about a definition of the digital twin, and John and I have one from kind of the seminal paper in 2017. but we're not even really happy with it. I mean, because it doesn't really capture everything. You got to have a physical. You got to have a model. I mean, we basically deal in visual images and really understand that far better than we do kind of a word salad that a lot of these definitions are.
How about you, John? Like what sort of got you thinking about like prototyping in the digital world to make the real world more efficiently?
Yeah, so let me mention something that Mike and I talked about last week or maybe a couple of weeks ago that I think is a great parallel for the digital twin. I should have sent it to you earlier before the interview, but you can go back and take a look. There was this 1995-ish Today Show with Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric, and they were talking about this great line from Bryant Gumbel says, "What is this internet anyway?" And so that was 95. And so for folks that's of the age as Mike and I, that doesn't seem like that long ago. But the DARPA internet program was in about 1969. So that's roughly 25 years apart. And so now we're roughly 25 years later. And I think digital twin is about as sort of parallels that a little bit. Really my vision is that the digital twin is going to be so critical and so instrumental, and actually I think it'll be routine somewhere in the future. Now, whether it's as big an impact as the internet has been, and 1995 they didn't even know, the impact of the internet that we have today. But that's a great way I think to think about it. Time will tell the impact that the digital twin has, but today it is just exploding. But let me go back a little bit in time to address your question. Mike and I were working in this area. We met in 2007. And so we were working in this area. I was working on something called Integrated Intelligent Manufacturing Systems. He had just written a book. We'll have to get the correct title from him, but Product Lifecycle Management was the book. And so we were working in similar areas, and it was really the basis for what is the digital twin. Both really concentrating in the manufacturing realm. And so today the digital twin has gone way before just the manufacturing area. And then so through that working relationship, we found that we were really in sync, I think, on our ideas for where this should go. By the way, I've been riding Mike's coattails. He is just a genius in this area. And so I'm really happy to contribute a little bit along the way, but I've been riding his coattails since we met on this digital twin. Now,
if John hadn't come up with the term, I'm not sure it would have caught on as much as it had. So I don't think there's any coattail issue here.
So but it really is this terminology because I first used and together with a group that I was working in, I led a NASA technology roadmap for materials and manufacturing. And we were trying to describe the integration of the disciplines, structures, materials, and manufacturing working together. And we came up with a phrase, the virtual digital fleet leader. And we had toyed around with digital twin. And I mean, what an awful name is virtual digital fleet leader. And so I had to go back and look it up this morning, and that just goes to show you why it didn't catch on. It's such an awful name. And so since we sort of tossed that digital twin name into the can, I told Mike, I said, man, that really does look like, sound like the work that we're doing. And so we adopted it, and it really caught on. And I think it's more than, our work, and that phrase has led to where we are today. Let me tell one more story, and I'll hush. But So in 2009, leading up to this work, I co-sponsored a workshop at Disney World, and Mike was there. A host of folks were there, but we called it Radical Innovation in Design and Manufacturing, the workshop. We heard, I'll make this short, we heard from the Disney Imagineers how they approached putting together one of their attractions, their big rides that they put together at Disney World. And at the time, they were putting together this ride about the abominable snowman, and I can't remember the real name of it. But they told us during the creation phase that they only allow the artists in the room for the creation phase. They don't allow the engineers in the room because the engineers will tell them what they can't do. And so when the artists finish, what they, their vision of this, then they present it to the engineers, and the engineers just about, they have to put together what these visionary artists, that's the kind of thing. And I've been working recently together with DARPA and together with a NASA program to try to work on some really complex systems, and we need prototypes for those systems. And I'm arguing, hey, let's do that all in the digital world so that we can get these hundreds of variations before we actually, even if we decide to build a physical prototype. So, and that's the same. That's what those, even though they were doing it, empirically and not digitally, and artistically and not digitally, that's the same kind of concept. And so, I think that the digital universe, that's where we're headed today.
Now you mentioned Florida, and a few years ago I was doing a story on this Orlando digital twin, and I was surprised at how many like simulation sort of companies were down there. Is that my imagination, or is Florida really like a leader in this sort of arena? And I know you're based there, Michael, and it's sort of separate from the heartland of manufacturing. But is Florida a hub for this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so in addition to what my own venture is, I'm with the University of Central Florida, and they actually have a school of modeling and simulation, and they basically have every Department of Defense entity there. They had started off with sort of digital training, but they have evolved into all kinds of digital kind of capability. So there's a lot of work being done in this particular area down here in Florida. And in point of fact, we're now the magnet for, obviously we have aerospace, which and to the point of aero to space is it's awfully damn expensive to make mistakes when you're dealing with this sort of stuff. So the more you can do it digitally, in fact, there was an article I wrote in 2015 that's now on for The Economist, that's now on the World Economic Forum, where I quote John as saying, really what we want to do is we want to design the product virtually, test the product virtually, manufacture the product virtually, support the product virtually, and only when we get it all right do we want to go out and move expensive atoms around. And that goes back to the premise of it is information is replacement for wasting resources, and it is far cheaper, and in fact not only less expensive but less wear and tear on the physical world if you can do these things virtually. So we really want to move as much work as we can into the virtual world. In fact, I'm the author of a book that's going to come out next year, and it's entitled Digital Twin Simulation in the Metaverse. And the idea is that one of my graphics is we have solution spaces, to John's previous point about all the different things that we could do. We really can't explore them physically, but if we went digitally, we could explore, theoretically, given the computing power, the entire solution space to see which is the gets us the best value for what we want to do. And we're not capable of doing that. The other thing is we start to throw AI into it as an assistant, and we really can make huge inroads in solving and coming up with great new products, because we are doing it, digitally and not physically.
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point. I want to say I'll revert back to just the manufacturing area. There are about 300,000 manufacturing companies in this country today. About more than 90% probably of those have fewer than 100 employees. And so this kind of technology is certainly coming out of high tech industries, not just manufacturing, but you mentioned automotive earlier. Those kind of high tech industries. Somehow, we've got to make this pervasive for those 300. If we're going to remain competitive, we've got to make this pervasively available for those 300,000 small, medium manufacturing companies that we have in this country. But it makes me think. You started this conversation with electric cars. There's around 1,500, although some cars, maybe these electric cars, have many more semiconductor chips in the typical automobile today. Our systems are just think about aircraft or spacecraft, those more complex systems. Our systems are becoming so complex today. We cannot deal with them empirically like we did in the past. That's a big cultural shock. Much of the work that we do in aerospace today is based on is validated, verified, qualified by empirical work. And so for these complex systems, it's just too enormous for us to do all of that verification empirically. And like Mike says, all the different design iterations that we can do, you just have to do that computationally today. And so a lot of the stuff, the really deep physics-based models, we're not quite there. Not in a lot of cases, not even quite there. So that's the area of progress that we're really trying to pursue most. That's the same way for other industries, not aerospace and not manufacturing, but healthcare. I know Mike sent me a note. He's going to speak at a NASA Earth environment climate. I'm not exactly sure what it is, Mike, but that's another very complex system. The Earth environment that we can. We've been looking at it empirically for a long time, and we don't understand it, right, Mike? And so, I think the way to get a more, fuller understanding is through computational approaches.
So how did we get to digital twins? Like, I know, Mike, when you started out, you were talking about agile product lifecycle management and making that more efficient. And I believe you had a term like mirror replicating. It was a lot of syllables. And then at some point, John stepped in. I'd love to hear both sides of the story of how we made it from, whatever you were doing then to where we sort of glommed onto this new term.
Yeah, it was information mirroring model, and it was as bad as John's.
And then what did you have, John? You had
so we've had a few names over the years. I had this intelligent integrated manufacturing systems, and then in the roadmap we called it virtual digital fleet leader. But the point is, we were looking at multidisciplinary systems, and so that's what we were trying to work, is the integration of these multidisciplinary systems. But regardless of the field, Mike was working in product lifecycle management, which encompasses, my work in advanced manufacturing materials and structures, which is a huge, enormous area, but it's just. It's a little thing when you look at the rest of the complex systems of the world, and so that's really what we were trying to do, is attack. We saw the complexity of the world and of our products, our physical systems, growing enormously, so much that we could not deal with them empirically like we have in the past. That's this huge cultural shock. I deal with it on a daily basis. I dealt with it last week at a meeting in Washington, D.C., where, half the audience is stuck in the, empirical, experimental, world of materials and advanced manufacturing. And then, well, more than half. And then I'm this proponent of, going, all digital so that we can move as far forward, and we'll let we still have to let the experimental and the empirical work help us to validate that. But I want to let that catch up and not constrain me when I can go so much further in the digital world.
Yeah. I mean, so the multidisciplinary thing is, I think, one of the big pushes on this, and the issue of it is that we're moving from a functional oriented world where everybody had their own little silos to this product centric world where we pulled it all together. And in fact, I have a chapter in a book a long time ago where I said, this is a sort of back to the future thing. I mean, the chariot manufacturer, he basically designed the chariot. He went out and killed the cow for the leather and chopped down the trees. He built the chariot. The chariot came back without its rider. He figured out which of the other kids in the village was probably the best fit for that, and then he disposed of it and built another chariot with the parts. So this wasn't a new idea. This really was a back to the future kind of concept. But Adam Smith set us on the path of the division of labor, which was a good thing. But the problem is we lost the ability of the holistic view of it, which is what we actually need to do. All the siloing of this stuff wound up with everybody optimizing their particular area and sub-optimizing. In fact, that sometimes not even being able to build the thing that they wanted to build. So the digital twin was this ability, was sort of this premise of pulling this all back together so that all the folks could be involved in it. And I mean, one of the big problems, and John has fought this all his life, is engineering comes up with this great design, throws it over the wall and says to manufacturing, go build it. And the manufacturing people look at it and say, well, what are these crazy people thinking about? Or had they talked to us earlier on, we would have told them, do this, not that, because this will save a huge amount of resources. So it was the digital twin is this move to a holistic perspective and being able to have all these parts work in harmony and across the entire life cycle. In fact, I just finished a paper that I just published on manufacturing and said, this idea of quality control is really this misnomer, specification control in manufacturing, because the real definition of quality is, does the product perform for the user to their expectations? You could manufacture it with the utmost attention to detail and specification, but if it doesn't work for them, it's not a quality product in my definition. So we've got to look at this from an entire product lifecycle way, and the digital twin is a way to do that.
Yeah, these siloed environments they're still a big problem for us today. In the highest of high tech industries, they're still a big problem for us today. We use a term at NASA, model-based everything. Every single discipline is using model-based tools like Mike talked about today, but they're still very much siloed and not integrated. And so I use the term multidisciplinary earlier. I really should have said interdisciplinary, because we need to work multidisciplinary, just lots of disciplines. We need to be interdisciplinary and work across those disciplines. Where when we're in the creation phase or the analysis phase, we're still working in a coordinated fashion so that later we can synthesize work that's going to lead to a product into this coherent whole. Mike used this term holistic. I think that's really true. That's a key descriptor of what we're trying to do, is bring some coherent, holistic approach to all these different siloed environments today.
So like when you say model-based everything, you're sort of, you're talking about like the work on model-based systems engineering, but it almost sounds like these individual MBSE tools are sort of focused on separate domains. And the idea of digital twins is to bring this into a more coherent sort of collaborative process. Is that right?
I'll give a thought on it. That so I work with the system. I always have worked with the NASA. Maybe invented the systems engineering in the early days of rocketry, because it was that complex system that they needed to address in some integrated way. That was all on paper and all empirical. So model-based systems engineering is an important discipline, or systems engineering, and today it's gravitating towards model-based systems engineering, a hugely important discipline area. But it does not. It's not the replacement. It's not the analog duplicate for the digital twin. It's another one of those silos, and unfortunately, all of these disciplines, it's a cultural thing that they like to act in these, behave in these silos. And so we're working with I had a professor just a few months ago approach me at a event that we were at and said, hey, we really think that model-based systems engineering is the digital twin, and the digital twin is getting in our way of promoting our area, advancing our area. And so I didn't mean to be ugly, but I laughed out loud a little bit, because they're not the same thing. And so I say in a presentation I give, here's what the digital twin is, and here's what it's not. And I think one of the things I say it's not model-based systems engineering.
So going back to this term digital twin, like John, where were when you had this thought? Were you in the bathtub like Archimedes, out for a walk? You were looking at a presentation and it just clicked? Like, how did the term first come into your imagination?
Well, so I don't know where I first heard the term, but I was working on, like I said, working on this NASA technology roadmap, and we were kicking around terms to describe an approach that we later called the virtual digital fleet leader. But Mike and I were working really closely together at the time, and we were working on the same type of problem, the integration of the disciplines, him across the total product lifecycle, me across the manufacturing, which sort of can be encapsulated into design, materials, manufacturing, tests, operation, those kinds of phases. And so when we were doing that, still those phases of, for me, the manufacturing life cycle were terribly siloed, throwing things over the wall like Mike described. So it just clicked. And I think I came to visit Mike and said, I don't really remember where we were, to be honest with you. And I said, hey, I really got a new, I didn't know if he would like it or not. I really got a new name for the work we're doing. And I think it clicked for him. And I mean, it began to, when we began to promote that, terminology, it took off. And like I say today, it's just, we were already working the concepts, but really I don't know when I was thinking about that with this parallel for the internet. Internet's probably not that cool a name, so I don't know. But it's probably the biggest impact to our lives, of our era. So I don't know. It was a great name.
Michael, do you remember that first conversation at all?
I don't remember the first conversation, but in my book, Virtually Perfect in 2010, I have a footnote that basically, under my information memory model, it says, John Vickers has a term for a digital twin, and I listed it as a footnote. And then in 2014, there's a very seminal paper on manufacturing that I did for Appriso that's now part of Dassault. In fact, it's unusual in that, and John mentioned the academic papers. It's been cited thousands of times, and for a white paper to be cited is highly unusual in the academic area. But it is about the digital twin in manufacturing, and that sort of put a stake in the ground in that particular area. The 2017 chapter that John and I did for AIAA really set out the whole sort of framework for digital twins that is still pretty relevant today. In fact, very relevant today. And if you sort of look at the kind of the amount of times things are mentioned, and John mentioned the papers. 2015, 2016, you start to see the uptake, and I think it's not only that the idea caught on, but we had enough computing and other capabilities in order to be able to start implementing it. So it went from, hey, this is this science fiction idea to, hey, we actually can do this. And I think that it required, in essence, Moore's law to come to the point where we could actually do this thing. Couldn't do it with 192K of internal main memory. In fact, I ran the largest computer, the first supercomputer in the world, reported into me, the ILIAC 4. And it didn't have enough. We could do as much computing as the rest of the world could do in 2 weeks that we could do in 20 minutes. But it was 25 megaflops of system. You can buy an Xbox today that's basically 12 teraflops. So even that system didn't have the kind of capability. In fact, I was involved with a project for General Motors in the early 70s, where we were doing a digital twin of a chair, a stick chair, on a 360/65, which $4 or $5 million cost. So you weren't going to do much digital stuff at that point in time, given the kind of capability. So it really took the kind of the ability of us being able to do it to have this thing come to fruition. Great idea for a number of years, and I think we laid a lot of the foundational groundwork for it. But all of a sudden, people could start to do what we had told them they could do. And again, to John's point, a lot of this is cultural. In fact, I'm very bullish on the technology. We're going to have wonderful technology to do this stuff. The cultural issues are the ones that are, I think, the real impediments in terms of adopting digital twins at the moment. I mean, I think that there are especially, I mean, it's not completely correlated with age, but a lot of the older employees just don't understand it. And yet we have digital natives coming on who they've not known a life without computers. And so, you know, there's a clash of cultures coming, and I think that we are slowly overcoming the cultural issues, and it's slower than the technical issues. We have technologies that do a lot of this stuff today. And I might mention that it's not only sort of getting our physics in order, but we can fuse physics and big data so that the more stuff that we collect the data on and how it operates, we're able to do prediction. The key of this is, can we predict what's going to happen? If we can't take our digital twin and predict what's going to happen in the future, there is a use of saying, I have digital twins and I can know what's happening to them no matter where they are in the world without having to be in physical proximity. But the real value of this is the ability of predicting what's going to happen in the future so we don't make stupid mistakes, you know. And I think that the digital twin is, I have a thing called front running simulation, that at every time zero, all our products are going to basically be forecasting what's going to happen in the future. And you know, like a little angel sitting on our shoulder, they're going to say, don't do that, stupid, because that's going to cause you a big problem in the next 20 minutes or year or whatever. So in essence, I also view the digital twin as kind of a crystal ball into the future. I mean, not a perfect one, it's going to be probabilistic, but if we can get a head start on saying, hey, this happened and here's what's going to happen because of that, we can get out in front of fixing problems before they occur, which I think is going to help tremendously in being able to have better products, better capabilities, and not have, catastrophes because we just didn't see that something was going to happen, that we just didn't understand as humans. So it's going to take a lot of computational capabilities, but the good news is you don't like how much computation we have. Wait 18 months, it's going to double, and we're in a phenomenal area already. I mean, we're going straight up. If you graph it on a regular graph, everybody graphs it on a semi-log line where it looks like a straight line. We're going straight up. So, and that's without quantum computing. Quantum computing comes along, and all bets are off on all this stuff. So it's I think a pretty amazing opportunity.
Well, it's
Hey, a couple of things. So if you turn Mike and I on to the digital twin conversation, we can geek out and just go for hours. So I apologize, but yeah, I think Mike mentioned his book Virtually Perfect, and so that was other than the roadmap that we had put out. That was the first time that it had digital twin had made its way into print, and so that was really the beginning. In about 2015, I approached two of the major design software companies, two of the very biggest, because I was trying to promote the digital twin for another new technology, additive manufacturing. So I asked those companies, could they put together, looking at that manufacturing life cycle that I described earlier, a model-based approach, digital twin for me. And both of those companies went off and worked on that and actually introduced product and sold products, digital twin products in that area after that. So I think that was a big jump in where we were in the evolution. Mike mentioned this information sharing, and I think about his digital twin model. The very first one that he put together was a graphic from NASA that had these a physical rocket and a virtual rocket side by side, and he called it his digital. I've forgotten his information mirroring model, digital twin, what he calls digital twin model today. And when you look at those and they're sharing this information, the first thing that comes to mind for me is the complex physics that we have to, like Mike said, be able to predict and understand, and like I said earlier, analyze, synthesize, harmonize into this coherent whole. That is really the tough part for us in the business that I'm in today, those physics-based models. However, we are not using the computational tools that we have available. We are lagging the computational capability, like Mike says. All bets are off when quantum computing comes along, and we need to catch up with the computational capabilities. So that's why I'm pushing this, for the projects that I'm trying to work today, to go all digital, not do a phase one, exercise and then go build a physical prototype. I want to do a phase 1, 2, and 3 digitally, digital twin of those kinds of systems designs. And only after we explore those hundreds of variations, come back and think about doing physical prototypes are so expensive, so in many cases rudimentary, that it is just hard to prove what you're trying to prove with a physical prototype, where with a digital prototype, you can take it to the nth degree. So
let's touch on this cultural aspect, because it's almost like I hear you both saying the computation is getting there, the infrastructure is getting there, the tools are starting to come along. And you see innovators like Tesla and SpaceX that, as startups, they don't have that sort of legacy baggage around processes and political factions within the organization. But then as these kind of capabilities come to established enterprises, what are the places they struggle with? And, how have you seen them navigate these existing cultural kind of processes to get to this more integrated flow of things?
So I think this debate goes back a long time. I talk about it some when I give a presentation. It's like the debate between theoretical physics and experimental physics. It's just been around for hundreds of years. And it's a tough cultural paradigm to break. I'm a believer in the Thomas Kuhn structure of scientific revolutions, where these transformative ideas don't come from day to day and gradual, experimentation and data accumulation. They sort of happen all at once, and that's what's happened to us, I think, with the digital twin. Same thing with the internet, and I don't mean happen all at once in a matter of a day. Just look at the, how the internet progressed to where it is today, and how computing's progressed to where it is today with these tremendous supercomputers. But over a short amount of time, there's this tremendous revolution, and so we're in. I don't know. Mike thinks about it more than me. I don't know where we're at in this revolution of digital twin. But when I said it last week in this Washington, D.C. meeting, I said, try to think about 50 years from now. That's where you want to be. But you don't want to wait 50 years. You want to get there in 10 or something like that. And so I think that's what's happening to us with the digital twin. We're right at the prefaces of this revolution and change.
Yeah, Don mentioned Thomas Kuhn. I mean, it's what they call a paradigm shift, and a lot of the science gets done at the margins, and it's puzzle solving. And when you come up with a real paradigm shift, I mean, that's where you really get kind of a major impact in what happens, and that's kind of what we're doing. I mean, and the cultural issue is I think the divide between the digital natives and a group. And I say it's not only correlated with age, but there is I've sat on boards of public companies. Arthur Clarke, the science fiction writer, famously said, any scientifically advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And senior management doesn't like magic. And to them, that's what it is. And so you've got a lot of what I call retirement-itis is I'm 5 years from retirement. Please don't bring me a project like this that I have to approve, because it could be a disaster because I don't understand it. And so as I say, this sort of weeds out over time. Although one issue on the sort of digital natives is their fascination with the social media stuff, which is not where they're going to get value out of this stuff. It is in this idea of using it for their work. So we've got work at both edges of the age divide here. But I think that the cultural aspect of this, in terms of how you've been brought up and what you've done for your entire life, and if you don't understand what the technology is capable of, is a problem in getting these projects, approved at the higher levels. And so I think that one of the ways, that I propose that you do it is you go after low-hanging fruit and you start to prove this off. But as I said, I mean, some of the technology people is, give me $500 million and I'm going to give you a perfect digital twin. And that's going to last about 2 seconds in a boardroom. And so you've got to pace this. But to John's point, is what we need to be doing is looking at where we're going to be with our computing capability, and looking at designing projects for that, not for where we are even today. But I'd have to say that there is a thing called momentum, and the momentum is certainly building for digital twins, even if people don't understand what the hell they are. They're all for them. I mean, there is some advantage at hype. The problem you don't want is that you basically overhype it such that it fails. I mean, somebody just said, well, I heard that 90% of all digital twin projects fail. And I'm like, where would you come up with that kind of statistic? I mean, And I think that the issue may be is if you overcommit, yeah, that could be a failure. But if you look at what companies are getting from having digital twins of capabilities, and John, tell them about your tank example, because I think that's an amazing story about the difference between the physical and the virtual in terms of development and cost.
Yeah. So a couple, it's just thoughts are just running through my mind. But one of the things, so my grandchildren will come from a generation that's never lived without an iPhone. Even, I mean, my youngest grandchildren, in elementary school have iPhones today. And so their view of the world's going to be tremendously different than our era's view of the technological world. And so I see, one of the things I talk about when I give a presentation is the digital twin of life. And I use this, graphic of a grandchild all the way to, a grandparent. And in the future, just think about how you'll be able to have, in terabyte, flash drives you can wear around your neck or something. Every single class you've ever taken in school and every picture you've ever, even my iPhone today, I didn't know it did it, but from time to time, it shows me, it brings up some photos of where we've taken a trip or something, and so it gives me these memories. You'll have, you'll have all of that in the future. Every book you've ever read, every medical test you've ever taken, today you go to the medicines is just as bad culturally, the medical industry, where they treat, they use empirical information to treat patients, and they're behind computationally, just like the other high-tech industries are, because all this data is available and all of it can be quickly, analyzed. I was at a doctor with my father and I said, hey, he takes, 14 medicines. Who looks at these medicines and says, and he said, well, general practitioner does, and he didn't really have a good crisp answer for that. I said, would it be, of any value to have, a computer program that you just put these medicines in and it just, quickly tells you any interactions and stuff? And I said, yeah, that'd probably be a good thing. But I mean, I don't think they have it. So, but Mike asked me to explain this. So the big rocket that we're building, Space Launch System, to take people back to the moon, and we've had one flight and we'll have another flight next year. Huge, the biggest rocket ever built, and it's going to really be our, resurgent back to space exploration from NASA. We went through years of physical prototyping, experimental. I come from the organization that it's a large aluminum welded structure. So we built coupon tests for tens of thousands of specimens. Ultimately, we built one big prototype, 200-foot tall liquid hydrogen tank for this. Built one big prototype and tested that. Where I come from in Huntsville, Alabama, very successful test, tested it to failure. It's a dramatic, you can look at it on the internet, a very dramatic. We tested it to failure because we wanted to see, what its ultimate capability was. And so we've got hundreds of millions. I'm not even allowed to say, I mean, I don't know, but how many hundreds of millions of dollars it cost us to get to that point. And we had analyzed that tank, that test, to within, I think about 3%, predicted its failure load, et cetera, to within about 3%. That's for a huge, prototype, one-off prototype. That is very good. That's a very good prediction. But so what that tells me that I've been relaying to Mike is we're really good at this. Did we need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars and test that big tank? Culture says we did. Culture says for a while we are going to, but I don't know. I'm pushing more. That's why I keep saying I'm pushing us to do more and more digitally, virtually, and then and then decide how much experiment that we need to do. We do it in a reverse today. We do the experiment and let it, decide how good we are analytically. So
Now, how much do you reckon you spent on the computers that got you to 3% accuracy?
it's probably a pretty good computer, but not much, thousands of dollars, not much.
So, we keep hearing more and more about these large language models and AI. Like, how do you see that percolating into into digital twins, both to improve the user interface and then, reversely using digital twins to improve, the ability to make sense of things with fewer hallucinations and greater accuracy?
Yeah, so I kind of always like scratch my head when I hear, oh, large language models, like that's supposed to be kind of an end all be all of kind of thinking. I mean, quite frankly, it's a giant correlation engine as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, if you really dig into it, and I have, you basically have your inputs and then you have your outputs, and you try to figure out, what inputs give you what outputs, right? I mean, but they dress it up in this magical language of large language models and things like that. What I do view it as is the fact that so if I take the virtual, I take the physical and the virtual world. Our native world is the physical world. I mean, we're very comfortable in it. We have to be because we have to live in it. AI kind of lives in this virtual world, and if you look at the difference between us and nature, nature tries all possible combinations and lets the environment sort it out. The Darwinism of it, right? I mean, we can't afford that. We're goal seeking, and we have to minimize resources. But if I move over into the virtual world, AI can kind of act like nature. It can try all possible combinations within computational limits, and let sort of the environment, if you will, sort it out so it finds the best alternative. So I view AI as I said, this little angel that can basically work in this digital virtual world and try all possible combinations of the solution space to come back and say to us, hey, here are the candidates that you should look at. So I view it as an opportunity to help, not as a replacement. And too often I hear, well, AI is going to replace humans. I mean, the Terminator model, and we don't need a replacement for humans. We got plenty of humans. What we need is humans that make better decisions on a constant basis because they have some understanding. I mean, there's two things that humans do that cause us a problem. One is bias confirmation, and the other is optimism. All right. And bias confirmation is we only look at the data that basically reinforces what we think is happening. Okay, and I can go from example after example in terms of the BP blowout in the Gulf to the Air France crash off of Brazil, where people think something's happening and they keep acting on that, and it's basically the wrong thing. And then humans are too optimistic, and it may be what we need in order to survive in the world. But if you ask somebody, how long is this project going to take, and they say a month, but if you look at their history, they have never done a project in a month. Okay, but the new project comes along, and we're going to get it done in a month, and they're never going to do that. So I view AI as sort of this opportunity to help humans make better decisions of that. And whether it's large language models or just giant correlation engines, I mean, that's kind of what we need to handle the amount of data. And as John pointed out, I mean, these systems are getting far, far more complex than what human understanding can do on a simplified basis. But we're really good, once we sort of get kind of this limited set of, hey, it's either this or this or this, to basically kind of ferret out the patterns here. So I sometimes think that the AI folks are more focused on the gee whiz technology than they are of So what are we really going to do with this?
So I'm not a AI expert, but I gave a presentation recently, and Mike was in the audience, and I had just heard in the news that 42% of CEOs said AI could destroy humanity in 5 to 10 years. So I told that audience, I said, just let me go on record that I have no fear of AI destroying humanity, not in 5 or 10 years, not in 50 years. So I look at AI, and I'm not an expert, as extreme, computing capability, and we need extreme computing capability to do the things that manage these, design, build, manage these complex systems of the future. So I think we need to keep moving forward with all of our most advanced computing systems. Then I guess I'm going to have to wrap it up. I've got somebody calling me from a not so fun, not nearly as much fun NASA meeting that's I'm 5 minutes late for.
Oh, how about one last line on where's digital twins going in the near future?
Somebody said it's hard to predict the future, but I just see it continuing. Digital twins going to continue to grow, just like Mike said, like exponentially, like Moore's law. Computing power is going to continue to, grow, and so we need to catch up with it a little bit in the industries that I'm involved with. I think culture is our biggest hurdle to implementing. But Mike said something about a perfect digital twin and a presentation in a boardroom. I was saying that last week in my meeting. We don't need a perfect digital twin. Don't be afraid that the model is not perfect. The model is never going to be perfect. By the way, the physical prototype is never going to be perfect either. So.
All right. Anything else, Mike?
Yeah, so I think what we're going to start to see is we have highly fragmented digital twins. We're going to see interoperable digital twins. We're going to see platforms that basically come about so that you don't have to do all the connections to have your digital twin. So for example, I got an airplane manufacturer, and he has a fuel tank and a fuselage and wings, and they all have their own digital and engine, and they all have their digital twins. You got to bring those all together in a composite digital twin in order to be able to get real value. And I think that we've got some work to do there, but I think that's sort of the next step you're going to see is these integrated digital twins. And then you're going to see companies provide the environment, because it's not enough to have your own digital twin of how your thing performs. How does it perform in the environment you're at? I mean, in terms of for example, airplanes, I mean, they don't fly in a vacuum. They fly in, weather and clouds and heat and things like that. So I think you're going to see companies start to do digital twins of environments so that we can do that. So I think that you're going to start to see this build up. In fact, that's why the book's called Metaverse. I mean, that's sort of kind of the term that's getting a lot of traction. The digital twin environment is really sort of this. We're going to have, if you followed Snow Crash, there was one metaverse. I think we're going to see a bunch of metaverses that allow you to kind of pick the environment that you want and be able to go test your products in that.
Well, thank you guys. This has been a fabulous discussion. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you, guys.
We always have fun doing these.
It's been fun.
All right.